The demand for STEM skills, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics has never been more urgent. These so-called gateway subjects are the foundation for high-growth careers in fields like artificial intelligence, robotics, biotechnology, and renewable energy. But South Africa is falling dangerously behind. The country faces a growing STEM skills gap, while unemployment remains among the highest in the world. The Engineering Council of South Africa says we need to produce 10 times more engineers to compete globally. Yet in 2023, only 3% of matric learners achieved a distinction in mathematics, and over 77% couldn't even manage a 50% pass. The result is a shrinking pipeline of young people prepared for the future world of work, and a missed opportunity to leverage education as a powerful tool to address the unemployment crisis and grow our economy. You're listening to No Ordinary Wednesday, where we delve into what's moving markets and shaping economies. Hello, I'm Jeremy Maggs. Now, in today's special Youth Month episode, we're going to explore why maths and science are not just academic subjects, but catalysts for economic growth and employability. Joining us is Professor Kobus Maree, a leading educational psychologist and career development expert whose research connects education, psychology, and employability. Also, Setlogane Manchidi, head of corporate social investment at Investec. Setlogane spearheaded Investec's investment into the Promaths program and is a passionate advocate for educational equity. To both of you, a very warm welcome to No Ordinary Wednesday. So, Kobus, let me throw the first question at you if I can. Maths and science often described as gateway subjects. So, from your perspective as an educational psychologist and career counsellor, what do you think makes these subjects not only foundational for young people, but so critical, particularly as far as South Africa's economy is concerned?
So maybe I should start off by confirming, yes, they are maths and science, physical sciences that is, are the two gateway subjects. Maths number one, physical sciences number two, for a reason. They, superficially speaking, help us to get into highly sought after, critical, scarce skills, fields of study. And we all know how important those fields are these days. But more importantly, engaging with mathematics, but also physical sciences actively, powerfully, seriously, will enhance their critical thinking skills. It will cultivate those skills. It will also, and this is extremely important, it will also nurture their cognitive abilities. And that is a very, very important thing. These things actually, in the end, get reflected in how they complete aptitude tests. Now, that's a story for a different day. But also critical assessment of evidence, asking questions, not accepting everything for granted, least of all in these days of fake news and those kinds of things. And then obviously attempting to address assignments in a systematic manner. That's the big thing here. So in the end, hopefully more than getting accepted, they will be able to join the knowledge economy. Let me just explain. People always want to know. Knowledge economy talks to knowledge, skills, generation of ideas. Ideas, as all of us know, of the utmost importance these days. So when people are capable of identifying these ideas and sharing it with people, they're doing all of us a big favor. Whereas the previous kinds of economy strongly lent on things such as manual labor, other types of labor, and especially then the idea of entering the job because it's a job that will earn me a bit of money. Knowledge economy talks to different facets. And that, in a nutshell, is my answer, with the PS at the end that says clearly these skills that I've talked about are highly sought after in this day and age.
And Setlogane, I was very pleased to see that you were nodding your head vigorously when the professor spoke about the importance of critical thinking, which is absolutely critical in every facet of our life.
No, it is. I mean, I think the issue around it is, sadly, many go through an education system, particularly at basic education level, that's taught them more to regurgitate than to rather think critically and engage with an inquisitive mind. As to what end? I do this to what end? What causes X causes Y? That's not what we are taught to do. And I think it's very important, and the significance of maths in instituting that critical thinking that best positions them to pursue, as Prof was saying, the scarce skills careers, the very careers that this economy need, the very careers that are required for you to be considered as a possible doctor, an engineer, and all the others. So I'm very grateful for that which we do, which enhances people's ability in maths and science.
So, Professor, you've also written in the past about the value of subjects that stretch our thinking, I guess back to the whole critical skills or critical thinking debate. So beyond content knowledge, what kind of skills does mathematics and science leverage in young minds?
Wonderful question. I can just confirm that we go far beyond just rote memorization, rote learning, those kinds of things. In fact, I'm going to list a few things that people might set up and note. Number one, these days, precision. Number two, not in any particular order, all the C's, career adaptability. We developed a 21-country project, a career adaptability scale in psychology. That is assessment instrument with the biggest sampling size ever. Massive. It has 4 dimensions that we want to promote, bolster as best we can. Control over the situation. Curiosity, curious about the new, instead of dreading everything, becoming curious, asking questions. And like I said, by engaging in these 2 subjects, we regain a sense of control over a world that seems to be spiraling out of control. And then, of course, confidence. If people don't have confidence, they won't achieve. But having said that, I must add the following: resilience, 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 creativity, sense of imagination, the ability to innovate endlessly. Those are the kinds of things we're interested in. But I want to mention something else as well. Intellectual humility. Mathematics, physical sciences teach all of us to be humble, not to accept anything for granted, to know that you have to try and try and try. And if you don't succeed sufficiently, by the way, the word fail, I've been battling the DBE and the higher education guys, so they should never use the word fail. As a psychologist, I've seen people classified as failures after grade 12 commit suicide. If you've seen that once, that'll be the end of you using fail forever. So won't be upset, use the word fail, especially when referring to a vulnerable youngster. So all I want people to do, please, is realize that you work and you work and you work. And all of us aren't as successfully as we could have been. But you carry on. And not only tolerate insecurity and change, embrace it. Make the most of it. Fire up your sense of curiosity, trying to find out what's going on in the world. And then the ability to identify patterns, trends in the data. So I'm going to stick my head out and say that I'm not aware of any person that has ever achieved a master's or a doctoral degree, courtesy of not being able to identify patterns. I've supervised 145 to completion. I should know by now. We teach people the skill of identifying patterns. What patterns are you seeing in the data? And again, why the patterns? Because there's something I can do then to regain a sense of control. And lastly, I need to mention here, the mark in mathematics is good. An A is good, a B is good, depending on what purpose you need the symbol for. But that's a cold mark. What is important is the fact that these fields of study empower you to make global contributions, social contributions. And I mean, not just passing some module at university because you have to do it. That's not what I mean. But I'll talk to that matter a little later again.
I'm so delighted that you used that word curiosity, because I think if all of us had a lot more curiosity, and Setlogane, you're smiling there, I think we'd be a lot better for it. But I want to come back to that word about contribution. And in that respect, Investec has invested in maths and science education through the very successful Promaths program, if I'm not mistaken, over 20 years. Give me a sense of the program and what is driving that investment.
It's a well-known fact that the maths and science education offering in this country and the performance thereafter is very challenged. I keep saying it's been in ICU for quite some time, and it's been in ICU because of a number of factors, and some of which Promaths tries to turn on its head. One of which is that there are inadequately qualified maths and science teachers who wake up every single day and stand in front of thousands of individuals teaching them maths and science. 2, there's overcrowding. I mean, 30 years after realization of democracy, sad to say that overcrowding still remains something that haunts our basic education system. The other is that there isn't enough contact time spent on the subject matter. Therefore, many people will sit for their final matric exams not having completed the syllabus. And if you're like me and you're from where I come from in the rural villages of this country, you don't get textbooks and learning resources on time. So what Promaths really does is that it says the curriculum offering is great offering, provided that you control your teacher-learner ratio, provided that you give each and every single youngster all the resources required to pass, provided that you make sure that they have enough contact time and that they are taught by well-versed, carefully selected teachers in maths and science. It's amazing what you're able to do in that regard. And we've done it, as you already say, almost for 20 years. This very year, we are in our 20th matric class, and we will be celebrating their results at the beginning of next year. But what's driven it has been precisely that there is, as I've said earlier, there's an economy, there's a business sector, there's a society, there's a country in need of specific skill set. And yet we are not producing those numbers, particularly if you think of in the context of facilitating broader societal transformation and facilitating economic inclusion. And that's what's important, because those who pursue these, we've seen them become chartered accountants, we've seen them become doctors, we've seen them pursue those careers that enable them to be able to immediately become active economic participants and really occupy their rightful place in society.
Let me push you a little bit on what I think could be flawed performance indicators, though. We know that we had a record number of learners passing matric and achieving bachelor passes last year. But this positive trend surely belies what is going on when it comes to the performance in mathematics and science. And therein is the disconnect.
I think that's it. Obviously, the Department of Education would like to celebrate the so-called improvements in it. We acknowledge that. But actually, key is that improvement does not tally. It does not go in sync when it comes to the performance in maths and science. And sadly, we have seen, particularly in some provinces, that there's even a drop in the maths participation at high school, not necessarily only just in performance. So it's a scary piece that you're looking at it and you're saying, we are reporting all these wonderful results and possibly improvements, but actually the very key subjects that matter, we aren't seeing enough people participate. And even of those who participate, we remain to be seriously challenged.
We're going to continue this conversation in just a moment as we look at the connection between improved educational outcomes and big national issues like youth unemployment. But first, a message from our sponsor.
They say it's not what you know, but who. Well, connections might get you through the door, but they won't help you own the room. So make no mistake, it's very much about what you know and who you listen to. Get the latest economic and investment insights from the experts. Follow Investec Focus Radio SA wherever you get your podcasts. Investec Bank Limited is a licensed FSP. T's and C's apply.
Now, Setlogane, as we continue this conversation, you've seen firsthand the difference that extra support can make. Can you maybe give us a sense of what you've observed in Promaths learners, maybe not just in terms of marks, because we were talking about that a little earlier, but as the professor was also talking or referencing earlier in this conversation, confidence, aspiration, I guess, as well as the choice of career path?
Let me start off by saying, in many respects, we've seen that the support provided for improvement in mathematics and science has positively impacted their performance and ability, and which talks to the confidence piece, their ability in other subjects. And it's a consistent observation that we've seen from year to year, that the more they are able to perform better in maths and science, you see the English mark goes up, you see the other results go up, which is great because it builds their confidence and belief that they can achieve what they can achieve. But what we've also been able to see is that because of that kind of confidence, there are many other conversations around what career choices you have that they weren't willing to have. Today, I speak to youngsters and they tell me, I want to become an aeronautical engineer. What? I want to become this or the other. Many of which they wouldn't have had even dared to think about, because one of the key things was maths is tough, maths is not for sissies, maths is this. We have demystified it and therefore have returned their confidence and ability to say, actually, all we've done is we've widened and we've said to you, the sky is not even the limit, and that you have to believe that really the world is your oyster. That's really been quite fascinating. I mean, at every single Promaths award, I have the pleasure of reading and calling out their names, indicating in terms of what they got in marks, but also indicating where they're going to study, and also indicating that they've been funded by so and so and so and so and so and so. The energy with which they walk onto stage, the confidence. You see people say, I entered Promaths with 30% in maths and I walked out with 100%. I mean, it's a vast, difference in confidence and in the ability to say, bring it on. And this is despite where I come from. It doesn't matter that I wasn't at one of the elite schools, that I was in a township school, but all you've said is you have facilitated an opportunity that's leveled the playing fields for me, and it's confirmed that potential is in all of us.
Anyone would think you're excited about Promaths.
I am indeed. It's no secret.
Kobus, let me come back to you. Let me pick up on the aeronautical engineers if I can. So we've seen the rise in careers regarding artificial intelligence, the importance of engineers, data scientists, robotics specialists, and I guess the demand for mathematics skills is increasing. Maybe just help our listeners connect the dots between school-level success and the subjects that will guarantee a degree of successful employability in these high-growth areas.
Certainly, thank you. So what we're actually talking about, if I can just provide a little more information, AI-related careers, the blue economy, the green energy notion, the idea of renewable energy, software engineering, biotechnology, statistics, data science in combination. You go global once you've achieved that qualification. And I get as excited as my wonderful friend next to me. So yes, all these fields of study require a strong foundation in maths and sciences. Hence the importance of these fields of study. And having mastered those skills, we equip them with a foolproof, future-proof recipe for success. So once they've mastered these, they can innovate even within constraints. They can think differently. They can go ahead with the necessary confidence. And like I said, I want everybody listening to this conversation to please go home and examine with your child. Ask your child rather to do the homework, spade work, and report back to you. And one more time, please don't venture into any of those careers without having job analyze everything as purposefully and as thoroughly as possible. That's the key to success. And if just one more thing I need to slip in, don't get any of us wrong here. Everything depends on hard work. If your partner, your friend tells you, I'm so flabbergasted about this mark I got, I haven't worked. She or he is misleading you. I'm not saying they're lying. I'm just saying their perception is not consistent with reality.
I never underestimate the importance of hard work and putting in the hours is absolutely critical. Setlogane, let me ask you where the rubber hits the road question, if I can. So the connection between improved educational outcomes and big national issues like youth unemployment. And do you think that maths and science can genuinely shift the dial?
I really do think it can. I mean, we have seen over the years an increase in the number of unemployed graduates. And it's scary to have to contemplate that in a country that we can't afford to be sending kids to university, yes, we are sending them, and now we have NSPES, and supposedly it's for free. But I think the key question is, if you dig deep and start asking, what are the spaces in which many of these graduates find themselves? You'll find that it's not in the STEM space. It is not. And the reality is, in the STEM space, there are many more options. And we really ought to be engaging and cultivating a culture that nurtures that mindset. Not only that you should be going to university, but that ability in terms of setting you up for coding, robotics, for whatever, that which you could acquire, that which will see you freelance from here to people in the US, the UK. There is just an increased chance of participating. And not only talk about participating. I was chatting to an actual scientist the other day, and I was saying, I really am thinking long and hard about how do we quantify the contribution that Promaths has made. And he said, you don't look further, just think about the earning capacity that you've created by virtue of people occupying the kind of positions that today occupy that they wouldn't have otherwise occupied.
And that trickle-down effect on the economy, it makes perfect sense.
Exactly. So I must say that if you think about the world over, India being a case in point, faced with poverty, what do? They turn to STEM. Right. And that's what we should be doing. Singapore, similarly, that's what we should be doing. We should really be encouraging. And I think the key point here is we should watch the earlier phases. Of course, Promaths is at a much later phase, but we should start cultivating the interest in maths a whole lot earlier so that the youngsters grow a confidence and see it as an avenue out, because there is an increased chance of economic inclusion. Our observation is, at least.
Kobus, Setlogane mentioned the importance of creating the right culture, and I would suggest to you that the right culture is predicated on the right teaching methodology within the classroom. In other words, creating that enabling environment. So what are the key improvements, in your opinion, that we need to make in how we teach mathematics and science in our schools? Is it about curriculum? Is it about more teacher training, which I suspect you're going to tell me it is, class sizes, or a combination of that and something deeper?
Thank you, Jeremy. All of these. But let me start off by saying that typically in South Africa, in many schools, maths is taught in a detached manner, alienating the learners, instilling a sense of fear, of anxiety. You know about the term mathematics anxiety. We hear people...
You're talking about my childhood, Professor, yes.
So people would gladly talk about their sense of maths anxiety, whereas, curiously, they're not willing to talk about their phobias to their psychologists. But I want to emphasize the following. We need to start humanizing mathematics, show its value, live as if you're passionate, teach as if you're passionate, as if you truly love mathematics. If not, you don't belong in a mathematics classroom. We cannot, in a detached manner, abstract manner, teach mathematics and ask vulnerable youngsters to be interested. We need to inspire, instill. Many are doing that. So what I want everybody to do is reinstill a sense of wonder, a sense of amazement, a sense of awe, a sense of magic in your maths classes, because you're really dealing with magic. The other thing I want to mention, these challenges, as Setlogane has said, really are endemic in this country. The following kind of thing. Learners feel that they're brutalized in classroom. So let's focus on the classroom. Yes, I don't ever want to walk around in a classroom where there are 136 or 110 learners. How can you teach anything? How can you facilitate any teaching and learning? I cannot even stand the sight of another school in the poorest part of the country in an informal settlement with no teacher learning support resources. So changes needed in the family as well. Why? Because you know and I know that many of our learners don't have a place to study. They don't have anybody when they go home. Interestingly, I want to share something with you. The person that I assessed heads a child-headed family, one of 5 members. His elder brother takes care of the entire family. He achieved 90 plus mathematics, and he did so with 10% eyesight in both eyes. That is magic. These things can happen. We need to learn about those stories day after day after day. Society, just see what Investec said, what they are doing. I don't want to elaborate on that matter, just follow their example. And by the way, I'm pleading with everybody, if you want to be inefficient, don't practice what you preach. If the lips say one thing, the attitudes say a different thing, you're not succeeding. You're not doing what you should be doing. So there's so much that we can do. And at the top notch, of course, government, fantastic. I want them to stay on board, abreast of matters as far as global trends go. But I also want them to make sure that what we see there at the end of the year, and heaven forbid, I know people will sit up and criticize me. I don't want to see the reality masked by these wonderful pass rates. Nobody is completely ignorant. So people know what's actually happening. The pass marks in mathematics, physical sciences is nowhere near we had projected them to be back then in 1994. So I'm saying I'm very concerned. Why am I so concerned? Jeremy Maxis, Setlogane, Nelson Mandela's, those guys are dying in informal settlements in circumstances that don't allow them to blossom. That's a crime against our entire population, and I will not budge.
So, Professor, certainly very powerful words there. And maybe that, Setlogane, leads on to this question. What has the Promaths program taught you about access and equity? And perhaps more importantly, how do you ensure that a program like this doesn't become the exception rather than the rule? Otherwise, we fall into that trap that Kobus has outlined for us earlier.
It's with a greater sense of humility that I acknowledge the extent to which we at Investec have remained deeply invested in facilitating broader societal transformation and being intentional and deliberate. And I bring these words in intentionally because if we are to facilitate the change, we really have to be intentional. You're right. It cannot be correct that this access that we've created, of course, Investec supports about 10 Promaths sites, which is about 5,000 learners on its own. We have gone knocking on a number of doors. We have been able to invite and welcome other partners into it, which have enabled 9 more sites. So we've got 19 sites all together running. But actually that need is far greater than that. It's far greater than that. And you talk to what has it taught us around equity and access and the likes. I think what we have thought in many instances when we realized democracy is we thought of equality. And equality says, let every single child have the same access, irrespective, or the same kind of access, irrespective of color, creed, and background, where they come from. What we've realized, though, through Promaths is that equality and equity are different. The one is, of course, almost a given and should be a given. But the equity is a recognition, particularly in our context, that we all come from different backgrounds, right? And which have shaped us in whichever way. And therefore we enter not on an equal footing. As much as all of you have said equality, we're not entering on an equal footing. And therefore we have to create opportunities that recognize the potential in all of us, but not blind to the fact that we are not starting from the same footing. And that's what's been important. It's almost like, right, if I tell you the kind of educational deficit in the basic education system, that a child who's in grade 10 mathematics today is technically a child who's in grade 6 mathematics. Now, if you fail to acknowledge that, you will not address in equity terms what ought to be done to bring that child to par with the rest of the children who are in grade 10. And that's what's important. So you can't have an homogeneous group and one-size-fits-all approach. In this context, if you're advancing equity, it is one that recognizes that we have to, as much as we advance equality, equal access. In fact, I think the biggest mistake we've made in this country is we've gone for, yes, access, but haven't asked the question of what quality of access and also what does it mean in relation to equity and where people come from and how do we meet them where they are. So Promaths has been the perfect example. It says, you know what? Potential is in all of us. It might take us slightly longer to get there because of our starting point, but we are able to get there if given the necessary support, the necessary encouragement, the necessary incentives that actually acknowledge it's amazing how resourceful our kids are when you push the envelope. It's amazing when the bar is raised, when you forget that the 33.3% is a pass and you actually realize that actually even a 50% is not quite a pass, we're aiming for 100%. It's amazing what you're able to achieve.
I like that phrase, potential is in all of us. And Kobus Maree, that leads to the last question here. In your career, you've helped thousands of young people navigate their career paths. So maybe let me ask you what message you might give young South Africans in this Youth Month, particularly those who are struggling but still dreaming in order to achieve that equity that Setlogane was referring to.
Thank you. That is truly a beautiful question. Just before I venture into a response, I would just like to confirm the following, and this is an explosive comment, I know. When it gets to marks achieved in aptitude tests, I think it's better to be very, very humble, admit that you don't know. In the vast majority of instances, I'm sitting here and saying that you cannot use those marks. They don't predict success. I'd rather go the qualitative route and ask them different questions. So people still looking at aptitude tests, especially in the case of disadvantage, in my book, really are doing what they should not be doing. But back to your question, we cannot practice career counseling like we did 120 years ago. When hundreds of thousands of jobs came onto the market, doesn't make sense. Today, the world of work has changed completely, turned upside down. So we cannot carry on doing what we have been doing for so long. And here I'm talking to the so-called test and tell approach. These days, we have fantastic mechanisms too. Number one, clarify people's sense of who they are, their self-identity, their sense of what career they want to venture into, their sense of a mission, the personal meaning they want to make in their career. They want to shape their careers. And what do they want to do to shape their careers? And then obviously, obligatory, the social contributions. And again and again and again, I'm trying to say that globally the notion is out, you have to make social contributions. We cannot just live on an island. No woman, no man, no human is an island. So what I want people to do is realize we have the mechanisms to provide to everybody in this country. Why on earth is life orientation not remotely doing what it should be doing? How can we instill inspiration in learners? What's happening in those classes? People can attack me as much as they wish. They're not doing what they should be doing. How many teachers are even interested in career counseling, yet offering life orientation? It deeply saddens me. So if Investec could invest in this matter, providing storied, integrated with scored approaches to everybody in this country, we will equal the achievements of any country in this world. Give everybody something to strive for, a North Star. Write it down, cut it out, and paste it there on your mirror where every day you see what it is that you're aspiring for. So there is something else I want to mention. Whatever you do, if you don't achieve sufficient marks at the end of grade 12, so what? I have, in many instances, not achieved successfully. And I just went back, taking it one step at a time. And those guys that are struggling, you're not alone. There's always help. You're never alone. And I want everybody in this country to please attend an emotional social intelligence course as well. That might stand you in great stead in addition to having yourself assessed and given this golden opportunity to do what you really, really want to do and to do it to the best of your ability and making global impact. Thank you very much.
This has been a very powerful, important and inspirational conversation. Professor Kobus Maree, thank you very much indeed, leading educational psychologist, along with Setlogane Manchidi, head of corporate social investment at Investec. To both of you, thank you very much indeed for joining me on this special edition of No Ordinary Wednesday. Please join us again in a fortnight as we continue to explore money trends shaping your world. If you haven't yet added us to your podcast feed, search for Investec Focus Radio SA wherever you get your podcasts and hit the follow button. Until next time, goodbye from me, Jeremy Maggs, and the entire Focus Radio team.
The views expressed are those of the contributors at the time of publication and do not necessarily represent the views of the firm and should not be taken as advice or recommendations. Investec Limited and subsidiaries, authorized financial service providers, registered credit providers, and long-term insurer.